Page 146. Finders, keepers, losers, weepers, chanted Mary Jane. Well, I had him longer than you have, said the boy, and I fed him and I brushed him too. I had him when he was a puppy. He used to chase his tail so much, it made him dizzy. And the only reason he ran away was because he was heartbroken. I went to scout camp for the summer, and Mom and Dad went east, and we left Dizzy with my aunt and uncle. They said he was so lonesome and homesick, he wouldn't eat or play or anything. Then one day, they couldn't find him anywhere. They thought maybe he'd gone home to look for me, so they drove over to our house to look for him. He wasn't there, and they looked every place. They advertised in the paper and everything. So he did run away, said Robert. You left him, and he ran away. Ribsy licked the boy's hand again. Look, he remembers me and wants to come home with me. But he likes me too, protested Henry. Ribsy looked at Henry and wagged his tail. For the first time, Scooter spoke. We like Ribsy right here in his neighborhood. He's just about the most popular dog around here, and every one of us would miss him. Henry stared at Scooter in amazement. It was the first time he had heard him say anything good about Ribsy. Yes, we all like him, agreed Robert. All the kids at Glenwood School like him. He waits for Henry every day under the fir tree, and all the kids know him. Yes, what about us? Asked Beezus. Henry has taken care of him for a whole year, and I don't think it's fair for you to take him away. He didn't have a collar or a license tag when I found him, said Henry. He had them when I went off to scout camp. I don't know how he lost them, except my aunt said he was awfully thin when he disappeared. Maybe he slipped his collar off over his head or somebody took it. The boy reached in his pocket. I have my birthday money that you can take. He held out a $5 bill to Henry. $5? I wouldn't sell Ribsy for $1 million. Oh, I didn't mean for you to sell him, said the boy hastily. I meant the money was to pay his expenses for the last year. I know it isn't enough, but it's all I have. Henry felt sorry for the boy. He could understand why he had wanted to keep a smart dog like Ribsy, but Henry couldn't part with his dog. Nothing exciting had ever happened to him before, and look at all the things that had happened this year. Henry knelt and put his arm around his dog's neck. You wouldn't want to leave me, would you, Ribsy? You wouldn't want to leave Klickitat Street, would you? Ribsy licked Henry's face. The stranger knelt and snapped his fingers. Dizzy, you want to come home with me, don't you? Ribsy looked at him, wagged his tail, and said, Woof! I guess he likes us both, sighed Henry, but I don't care. He ran away from you, and I found him. That's right, just like I said, finders, keepers, losers, weepers, said Mary Jane. But I raised him from a pup, and my mother and father and kid sister miss him too. But he likes to meet me after school and play with the kids. Henry paused to pet the dog. Then he said slowly, maybe we should let Ribsy decide. Sure, said Scooter. That's a good idea. Don't worry, Henry. He'll choose you. That seems fair enough, agreed the boy. How shall we let him choose? I know, said Scooter. Leave Ribsy where he is, and each of you go 20 paces down the sidewalk in opposite directions. Then when I say go, you both start calling at the same time. Whichever one Ribsy goes to gets to keep the dog. Okay, agreed Henry. He felt all quivery inside. Sounds fair to me, agreed the boy. Oh, Henry, what if he doesn't choose you? Asked Beezus fearfully. Don't worry, said Mary Jane. He won't want to leave Henry. Scooter held Ribsy by his collar. Henry counted 20 squares down the sidewalk towards his house. The boy walked 20 the other way. They both turned and faced the dog. Henry's mouth felt so dry he was afraid he might not be able to call. Scooter turned to the boy. Say, you don't have any meat or anything in your pockets, do you? He asked suspiciously. No, I don't. Cross my heart. How about you, Henry? Scooter was going to be fair. Henry gulped. No, me either. Okay, we want to make this contest fair. Good luck, Henry, shouted Beezus. Thanks, said Henry weakly. Scooter turned Ribsy toward the street, so he was facing neither Henry nor the strange boy. All right, you guys, ready? Get set, go! He took his hand off Ribsy's collar. Here, Ribsy! Here, Ribsy! Come on, Ribs! At least Henry's voice worked. Here, Dizzy, Dizzy, Dizzy! The dog's former master snapped his fingers. The dog looked at Henry. He looked at the other boy, then he sat down to scratch behind his left ear with his left hind foot. Ribsy! Wailed Henry. Come here! Here, Ribsy! Here, Ribsy! Come, Dizzy! Come, Dizzy! Called the boy. Ribsy stood up and took a few steps toward the boy and wagged his tail. The children groaned. Ribsy! Shouted Henry with a sinking feeling in his stomach. Ribsy stopped, turned around, wagged his tail, and said, Woof! Attaboy, Ribsy, shouted Henry. Go on, Ribsy, screamed Beezus. No coaching from the audience, ordered Scooter. Ribsy took a few more steps toward Henry. Then he looked back at the other boy. Horse meat, Ribsy! Horse meat! Here, Ribsy! Here, Ribsy! At the mention of horse meat, Ribsy looked at Henry. Here, Dizzy! Then the boy had an idea. Here, Ribsy! Here, Ribsy, he called. Hey, you're cheating, objected Henry. I'm supposed to be calling him Ribsy. There wasn't any rule about what we should call him. That's right, Henry, agreed Scooter. Look, he's turning around, shouted Mary Jane, but Ribsy only turned around to chew at the spot near his tail. He bit at the flea, sat down, scratched behind his left ear again, then stood up. The boys kept on yelling. With a tired sigh, Ribsy sank down on the sidewalk, put his head on his paws, and closed his eyes. The children groaned. Don't go to sleep now, Ribsy, begged Henry, who was so scared his hands felt cold and damp. Ribsy opened his eyes, and without moving his head, turned them first toward the strange boy and then toward Henry. Come on, Ribsy, they both coached. Slowly, Ribsy stood up, and after a backward glance at the stranger, trotted 8 steps down the street toward Henry. He paused, scratched again, trotted the remaining squares to Henry. Then he sank down and his head on Henry's foot and closed his eyes again. Ribsy had chosen Henry. The children cheered, but Henry couldn't say a word. He knelt and hugged his dog. I knew he'd choose you, Henry, crowed Mary Jane. I just knew it all the time. My, but I was scared for a minute, said Beezus. The other boy looked so disappointed that Henry couldn't help feeling sorry for him. I'm glad Ribsy wants to stay with me, said Henry, but I'm sorry you have to lose him. He's an awfully good dog. I hate to lose him too, but I guess I can't complain. It was a fair contest. The boy threw his leg over his bicycle. Say, do you suppose I could come over and see him sometime? Sure, anytime you want. Thanks, I'll be around soon. The boy rode off down the street. The children all crowded around Ribsy to pet him. I sure am lucky, said Henry, but he had me scared for a while. Jeepers, I don't know what this neighborhood would be without Ribsy, said Beezus. Come on, now that Ribsy is Henry's for keeps, let's think of something we can all play.